From the News Channel 5 Network, this is OpenLine.
Hello everyone, I am Ben Hall. Welcome to OpenLine. We are talking about tax reform in Tennessee. Tennesseans hate to pay taxes, but we are often looked at as being in the lower tier in many categories. So how do we reconcile the two? We will tonight be talking about a plan, I guess, to lower taxes in Tennessee, but how realistic is that? Happy to have with us from the Beacon Center, the policy director from the Beacon Center, Lindsay Boyd. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
So, first of all, the Beacon Center. Let's get everybody up to speed. What is the Beacon Center?
We are an economic research organization, and our mission is to empower Tennesseans to reclaim control of their lives so that they can freely pursue their version of the American dream.
So you go to the legislature, right? You take proposals to the legislature. You actively advocate on behalf of certain positions.
Yes, we do.
You're somewhat conservative in nature. Would that be a fair statement?
Technically, we're a nonpartisan organization, and we do work with people on both sides of the aisle every year on a variety of issues. Some may call us conservative, but if you talk to a conservative or another conservative organization, they may say that we're not conservative enough or that we might even be on the other side. So I think it depends on who you talk to, and again, I think that actually speaks to the quality work that we're doing because we are able to walk that line of being purely policy-oriented and not political in any way.
So you have a series of legislative agendas you'll be bringing forward this year to the legislative session. I want to focus first and foremost, really, on the tax reform. You're talking about the Hall income tax, the Hall tax.
Yes, or as we like to call it, the nest egg tax. The
nest egg tax. Okay, so let's take a step back. Tell us what the Hall tax is. How did it come about?
Well, the Hall tax has been in place since for over 50 years in Tennessee. It came about because the state decided that it would like to tax investment income. So it is a 6% tax now. It's evolved over time. It started out at a smaller percentage, but as it stands now, it's a 6% tax on stocks and dividends, income that people earn through their investments. And that 6% tax is a tax on all income after they start to withdraw. So let's say you make $80,000 a year. All $80,000 of that is taxed at 6% if any dollar of that earning is from investments. So it's a really punitive tax. It's a tax that mostly affects seniors, but it also affects young entrepreneurs, people starting small businesses, people that are looking to set up a system where they can draw money from their investments so that they can go out and found another business while their current business operates with the current model. So it's a tax that affects more than just the people who pay it, because it means that people who are founding businesses are looking at Tennessee and thinking, why would we want to relocate our business or expand to a state like Tennessee when we know that 6% of our taxes or 6% of our dividend income will be taxed, whereas if we go to a state like Florida or Texas or virtually any other state that doesn't have an income tax, they won't face that same scenario there.
So we don't have an income tax, but we do have this this Hall tax. It's tax on dividends.
Yes.
The argument that others have is we don't have an income tax. We are really reliant on this money. This is money that comes from dividends, investments. Again, you would have to be wealthy enough to at least have investments before this even kicks in. So even Governor Haslam has concerns about removing the Hall tax, saying where do we go to get the money? It generates $285 million. We cut that. And sure, it sounds great, but we cut that. Where do we go?
Well, first of all, I think that there's some misinformation out there about who actually pays this tax. I think that a lot of people would think that those who pay it are the wealthy people who can afford it, quote unquote. But actually, 50% of the people who pay the Hall tax make less than $75,000 a year. And if you're thinking about retirement and having to live on a $75,000 income for the rest of your life, and maybe you're in your late 60s, early 70s, communities, that's really not a lot of money. If you've got children, you're putting into college funds, you are paying out for other health and medical expenses. $75,000 for a couple is really not a lot of money. And so I think we need to put that to rest first and make sure that people understand that that's many times your neighbor. And then moving forward beyond that, talking about where do we find the money if we repeal the tax? How do we make up for that in the budget? Well, the hall tax, the income from the hall tax makes up less than 2% of state revenues, and that's really, you know, if we're talking about how do we address our budget problems, Tennessee has actually done a really good job in managing our budget, and we do give a lot of credit to Governor Haslam and the legislature for being very frugal. We have the least amount of debt per capita in the country, and we're really proud of that. We think that our state's done a great job, but we can do better. Every year we release a pork report where we chronicle waste, fraud, and abuse across the state, and this year was our 10th anniversary edition, and we chronicled the most amount of pork in its tenure at over $700 million. So there's obviously room in the budget to make cuts that are responsible and allow seniors and young entrepreneurs the ability to keep the money that they earn, as well as allow the state to expand business opportunities so that more people can get jobs.
So you're saying it's 2% of the state budget, but also money from this hall tax goes to local communities.
Yes.
So you have a wealthy community like Oak Hill, where actually the governor's mansion is. And a lot of people there probably pay the hall tax. So Oak Hill would receive a nice sum of money because of the hall tax. If you did away with it to make Oak Hill whole, then you would have to have other poorer communities paying into Oak Hill to make them whole so that they don't lose money in this whole deal. And the governor said that doesn't feel right to him, to have poorer communities paying into wealthier communities like Oak Hill, which was his example. That is also part of it. So if you were to do away with the hall tax, you're also, according to some, harming local communities, taking money away from them as well. It's not just state money, but it's also local community money.
Well, I think that that's one way to interpret the problem, but that's a very short-sighted view of what we're facing, because there are, of all of the communities across the state that receive income from the hall tax, the vast majority of those rely on the hall tax for less than 4% of their budget. There are reforms out there that we've been working on for the past 2 years that address the issue of holding the locals harmless, and so that's a possibility. There are ways to structure a reduction of the hall tax through a full repeal that can do that, can accomplish that, but even beyond talking about whether or not we want to consider holding the locals harmless, let's think about the fact that they do rely, for the majority of them, they rely on this income for less than 4% of their budget. And so it forces them to consider how they're spending their money. It makes them be more responsible. It gives them the opportunity to look at their budget and say, are we really spending money wisely? Are there places where we can cut spending? And in our pork report, we list out those opportunities for them, even at the local level, so that we can create a more fair system, so that we're not stealing from our seniors' retirement funds and taking from the nest egg that they've worked so hard to build. That's fundamentally unfair. It's fundamentally not the Tennessee way. And so we're giving both the state and local communities the opportunity to reevaluate how they tax their citizens and come up with better solutions. And it's not unreasonable.
And lastly, before we start taking calls, I want to open up the phone lines, 615-737-PLUS, 615-737-7587. When you do hear where we rank in a lot of categories, it's often not near the top. It's often closer, it's certainly in the bottom tier. Mm-hmm. So when you start talking about taking more state money away in a state where we're already underperforming in many categories, you know, name your category, is that the appropriate way to go? Certainly that would be the argument from the other side. That's just not the right way to be going.
Well, certainly if you believe that government creates jobs and government creates economic opportunity, then you would think that you want more money going into the state government. But that's not what our philosophy is, and we don't believe that that's what the majority of Tennesseans out there believe, because they're on the front lines every day. They're going to work. They know that they're the ones creating opportunities for themselves, and many times it's the government that's getting in the way. So we believe that the market creates opportunities, and the more money that's in the marketplace, the more opportunities that there are. And so we believe that in repealing the hall tax, you're allowing more people to keep more of their hard-earned dollars. Those dollars remain in the community rather than being paid out to the state and redistributed, so that money never recirculates. It stays in the communities themselves and in the pocketbooks of those who pay it. And we believe that that's the fundamentally most fair way to go about structuring your tax system.
So what do you all think? We're going to take a break. Taylor and others hold on the line. We'll start taking your phone calls. There's the number again, 615-737-PLUS, 615-737-7587. Take a break. Be back right after this.